course I didn't check it. All right, well, bear with me one sec here. All right, the pre-show didn't work, and I apologize about that. We're having some technical difficulty already, and we're going to get going here a little bit early. And Mallory is here tuning in from the Maritimes down there in Eastern Canada, and my friend Eric is here from Minnesota, Minneapolis, Minnesota. Get it the right way around. First the city, then the state. Today we're talking about social driving, those problems that you face every day out on the roadway and the errors that other drivers are going to make. If you want to be a safer, smarter driver, do not engage in what other drivers are doing. Let's make sure I got audio here. Yes, excellent. We've got audio. Everything seems to be working now. There we go. So if you want to be a safer, smarter driver, understand social driving. What is the problem that you face every day when you're out on the roadway? And the top 3 reasons for traffic crashes under the umbrella of social driving are failing to give way, mismanagement of speed and space, and following too close, okay? Other traffic definitely follows too close. If you get out and watch other traffic, they're all 1 second, maybe 2 seconds behind the other vehicle in front of them. And we know that other traffic is following too close because the number 1 reason for traffic crashes in North America, the number 1 crash in North America is rear end crashes. So they're following too close. They're failing to observe when traffic in front of them or the vehicle in front of them is slowing down or coming to a stop. Today, walking the dog, went across the intersection. It was a minor road that met a major road here in the suburb where I live. And motorcycle, one of those 3-wheel jobbies with the 2 wheels on the front, I'm not sure what they're called, Coming through the intersection, the motorcycle rider failed to scan the intersection, and the van stopped at the stoplight and then just ran right through the intersection and like barely missed the motorcycle. The dog had stopped to sniff something, and I turned around to watch the intersection and the motorcycle go through, and I thought for sure we were going to be witnessing a crash. Elevator fan, I'm sorry to hear that you had a seizure and you can't drive for 3 months. That's unfortunate. Sorry to hear that, my friend. All right, so if you have questions about passing a driver's test, questions about becoming a safer, smarter driver, or starting a career as a truck or bus driver, we can help you with all that here. The way that it works is we have a presentation that's about 8 to 10 minutes. Get through the presentation on social driving, defensive driving, becoming a safer, smarter driver, and then we come back and we answer questions for the remainder of the hour about all of that, anything to do with driving, helping you out, and mostly reducing the chances of being involved in a crash, because that's really what we want to do, especially in the United States. They're doing studies right now in the United States to try and figure out why pedestrian deaths and traffic deaths are so high in the United States. And, I have my theories about it, but it'll be interesting to see what comes out of this research in the United States about why they are thinking that they're having so many traffic crashes in the United States. But in my mind, it has everything to do with social driving. And again, I told you the top 3 reasons: following too close, failing to give the right of way, and mismanagement of speed and space. And I might even go so far as to say that observation, failing to observe correctly, is another problem. But we'll talk more about social driving in the presentation, give you more information, more details. So let's get over to the presentation. We'll get through that, and then we'll come back and we'll spend the remainder of the hour answering your questions. Social driving. These are the problems that you face every day when you're out on the roadway. Expecting somebody not to do something goofy on the roadway is like going to watch your favorite sports team and expecting the other team not to score. It's simply not a reality. It's not a matter of if something goofy is going to happen on the roadway. It's a matter of when something goofy is going to happen on the roadway. For those of you new to Smart Drive Test, my name is Rick August. I was a truck driver in the 1990s, hauled freight between Ontario, Canada, and the United States. Became a licensed commercial driving instructor in 1997. And most of my experience with driving instruction has been with commercial vehicles, semi-trucks, buses, air brakes, logbooks, compliance, those types of things. And that is my expertise. And I do expert witness testimony as well, helping out lawyers to win settlements for people that have been injured in traffic crashes. 2006, I graduated from the University of Melbourne with my doctorate in legal history, which is the study of policing, courts, and prisons. And if you don't know what legal history is, sorry. For those of you who may or may not know, legal history is the study of policing, courts, and prisons. My expertise is in policing as it relates to traffic. 2015, I started the YouTube channel, the online business. It has been wildly more successful than I could have imagined. We're well past 300,000 subscribers. The business is doing well. We're redesigning the website. So lots of exciting stuff going on here. And my friend Tim here is from DriveSmart BC. If you want to know anything about traffic safety engineering in the province of British Columbia, check out DriveSmart BC. All right, resources to have a look at, and these are down in the description. 5 defensive driving techniques and tips and skills for new drivers who just got their license. Those 2 links are down in the description. Have a look there. All right, definitions of social driving. It's the one thing that unites us as a human race, regardless of creed, religion, color, or whatnot. I am a good driver. Most people would believe and agree with that statement that I am a good driver. Unfortunately, the belief that they are a good driver, most people have little, if any, training beyond that of getting their driver's license. After that, there is no requirement to upgrade their license, to take a defensive driving course, or to engage in any professional development. So most of the training that people have on the roadways who are driving, their ability to drive a vehicle is experiential. It's what they learn in the arena of social driving, and they are learning bad habits from other people when they're driving. Most people are reactionary when they're driving. They're following too close, they stop too close in traffic, and they stop and drive too close to other road users. And I told you the story there a couple of weeks ago when I was walking Stryker and walking down my residential street, and the car turned left from the side street, and I was standing there and I actually backed up onto the grass because the student driver actually drove so close to me. Yeah, Tim, unfortunately, I've seen that the audio is out of sync, and I've seen that in my editing when I'm redoing it. I'm going to have to investigate that and figure out why my audio is out of sync. There's something in the latency here that I can do to fix that. So I do apologize. Unfortunately, I can't fix it on the fly here. Okay, so stopping too close to other road users. So space management. They are too close to other traffic. They are too close to other road users when they're driving on the roadway. The other piece about social driving is the poor communication, the nose to tail. People think that other drivers should signal, and they think that they are going to signal when in fact they're not going to signal. Again, this is part and parcel of social driving, that other drivers are not going to signal when they change directions of the vehicles. Everyone follows too close, and when traffic slows, vehicles are even closer together, and this is another reason for rear end crashes. Okay, one driver brakes, everybody brakes, and especially out on the freeway, if any of you have driven on major interstates and freeways that are congested, then what's going to happen is eventually you're going to have a phantom traffic jam where the entire mess comes to a stop, and then you get past whatever obstacle or obstruction was there that was slowing down traffic, and you're going, what the heck is going on? Tim, I was actually looking into the audio and video out of sync there a couple of weeks ago, and I don't know why, because this is kind of a new problem that I've had in the last little while. It's the great thing about technology. You're always trying to fix it, always trying to adjust it, which is, and then they wonder why people give up doing YouTube for sure. All right, too close in queues, you get rear-ended. Bilateral control, your control in front and behind, the misperceptions. Many people believe that if it keeps space in front of their vehicle, other people are going to cut in. I had comments the other day about that somebody in Chicago said that if you do that, everybody's going to cut in. Yeah, every now and again they're going to cut in, but for the most part, they're going faster than you anyway, so they're not really going to be there for very long. So keep space in front of your vehicle, keep space behind, and if somebody is tailgating you, then increase your following distance in front to protect yourself and avoid doing aggressive movements, turning, and those types of things. Okay, drivers fail to communicate, as I already said. The number one way that we communicate in the arena of social driving is the position of the vehicle or the position of the road user on the roadway. If a pedestrian is standing close to a crosswalk, there's a high probability that he or she is going to cross the roadway. Or if a vehicle is slowing in relation to an intersection, as they're coming up to an intersection, they're slowing down and they're moving their vehicle to the right, it is an indicator that they are going to turn right. All right, unpredictable actions are erratic and without warning. U-turns, for example. If you live in a place, for example, where we live here in the interior of British Columbia, we do not have the driving culture of U-turns. And if somebody pulls a U-turn in front of us or at an intersection, it is an unexpected and unpredictable action on the part of other road users. And you need to keep in mind that that is going to happen. All right, reactionary and retaliatory. If a person is tailgating you and you slow down to indicate to them behind you that they're in fact tailgating you, then they're going to follow even closer to tell you that you are being a bonehead. Drivers police and criticize other drivers, and the main road through town here where I live is closed. And so you have to come up through into the suburb where I live in kind of a weird way. And you come through the roundabout and you can make a left up the hill to come into the suburb where I live. Well, there's a no left turn sign there. One day I turned left there against the sign. And of course, the driver that was behind me got on the horn and was policing me that I couldn't make a left turn there. So even though certain things happen, we do things against the contrary to signs, we speed, we do those types of things. Other drivers are going to police our actions when we're on the roadway. Crowding, honking, the figure, road rage, all these are forms of communication. All these are drivers being reactionary and retaliatory on the roadway. Following too close, failing to give the right of way. I'm right, you're wrong. It's the other person that needs to do something to fix their driving. It's the other person that needs to do something to reduce the number of crashes we have on our roadways, especially in the United States of America. I was actually surprised the other day when I was looking up numbers due to the fact that I get a lot of Indians looking at the defensive driving video, and they're like, oh, come to India, you can't drive like that, you can't keep space in front, and blah, blah, blah. You wouldn't survive a day here. Well, unfortunately, they're not surviving either because they have a very high crash rate per 100,000 people. And I was actually surprised that the United States of America is not that far behind them in terms of number of traffic deaths per 100,000 people. So know that the United States doesn't have a good traffic safety record, and they haven't had a good traffic safety record for decades now. And now they're beginning to investigate why their pedestrian and vulnerable road user deaths are so high. So social driving, not failing to give the right of way, following too close, and mismanagement of speed and space. But it's not my issue, it's other people's issue on the roadway. Good luck in your driver's test, and remember, pick the best answer, not necessarily the right answer. Tim says, it's epidemic, drivers who cannot stay between the lines. Just look how they warn away in the corners. Yes, and the number of times, Tim, that I have seen drivers in roundabouts just come through the roundabout and then bang off the curb on the other side because they do not know where their vehicle is in relation to other things, to curbs, to fixed objects, to pedestrians and whatnot. And this is why when I teach young drivers, new drivers to operate a motor vehicle, to get their license for a car, give pedestrians lots of space, one vehicle length. Not one vehicle length. Move into the other lane if you can, if there isn't any traffic coming. And if you can't move into the other lane and you can't give them 3 feet of space, 1 meter of space, then simply stop and wait for them to move or to get off the roadway or to pass you or those types of things. That's the best thing that you can do in certain situations. But, as I said, the driving instructor was completely in the wrong, and the driving instructor should have stopped the vehicle and explained to that student that they cannot get that close to pedestrians on the roadway. And again, motorcycle awareness. I was talking about in the presentation the motorcycle that went through the intersection here just when I was walking Stryker this morning, and the van just drove through the intersection right at the motorcycle, and I thought there was going to be a crash because I was stopped turning around looking at the intersection because that's what I do, is watch traffic. It's my whole life. So motorcycle riders, you need to be aware of vehicles at intersections to keep yourself safe. Driving is a social activity, and this is why we call it social driving. Other drivers are going to make mistakes. They're not going to see motorcycles, especially for those of us who live in countries that get winter, that get snow and ice in the wintertime. We are not programmed to look for and see motorcycles. So when we have this few weeks in the summertime, this 12 weeks in the summertime where there are motorcycles on the roadway, these are a new road user group. Pay attention to the motorcycles on the roadway. Look for motorcycles, look for bicycles, e-scooters. This is the new road user group, all the electric vehicles, the bicycles, the scooters, those types of things on our roadways. And know that this is what's going to happen. Now, Tim and I may disagree on this, and that's all right, but I truly believe that if we want to make motorcycle riders safer, one of the things that we can do is allow lane filtering at intersections. Allow motorcycles to move up between the lanes of traffic and then get off at the beginning, the way that they do in California and the way that we do in Europe. When I drove in Spain 2 years ago, that was the first thing that I noticed was when I come out of the airport in Barcelona and I was driving into town, that motorcycles and scooters were moving up between the lanes of traffic and getting to the front of the queue, and they were taking off first because they have better acceleration than a car. I was much more aware of scooters. I was much more aware of motorcycles on the roadway than I am here in North America, because they're just, you see them every now and again, but it's not something that is in your brain. Now, if you're sitting at a traffic light on a multi-lane road and you got motorcycles moving up between the lanes of traffic, then motorists, drivers are going to be more aware of motorcycles and scooters, e-bicycles, and those types of things on our roadways. So it's a matter of awareness. Is it part and parcel of the traffic that makes up our roadways? The traffic that is on our roadways. Because snowmobiles, for example, you live in a place that gets snow and ice and they have snowmobiles in the wintertime. I haven't seen a snowmobile for a long time. And a perfect example of that is trains. For a very long time, trains were off my radar. I lived in southwestern Ontario. I moved to Australia. There are very few trains in Australia, very few trains in other places, and trains were simply not on my radar. I moved here to Vernon. They sent me to Kamloops to work in 2014. Right next to the railway tracks was where the driving school was located. And the mistake that I made was I got in the truck with a student, and I'm talking like 100 feet. So there was the exit from the driving school, there was a set of railroad tracks, and there was the major intersection out onto the Trans-Canada Highway. Nobody informed me that when you get out there and if the light turns yellow or red, that you just kept going through the intersection with the big truck. Student stopped. Trailer was sitting over the train tracks, and there are a lot of trains going through Kamloops. It's still a major hub for the Canadian National Railway here in our country. And I'll tell you, it was probably about 5 minutes when the light changed. It was probably the longest 5 minutes of my life, because I'm just sitting there and I was on edge that there was a train that was going to come. So how do we get more aware of the vehicles that potentially could be on our roadway that we could potentially have crashes with? And for motorcycle riders, you're getting out now, you're riding your motorcycles, left-hand turns in front of motorcycles is the most common type of crash for motorcycle riders. So know that. Pay attention to intersections. And that person this morning, the motorcycle rider on the funky motorcycle with the two wheels at the front and the one at the back, be more aware of intersections and what other traffic and other drivers are doing at those intersections. Tim says you would take your life in your hands here in BC, doing lane filtering, too many drivers changing lanes without looking. Yes, but the thing is, Tim, that motorcycles, we would be more aware of motorcycles, and and I know what you're saying. It's kind of a chicken and egg thing. That exactly what you're saying is that too many drivers are changing lanes without shoulder checking, because not shoulder checking is the first skill that drivers lose after getting their license. So you're exactly right. But hopefully lane filtering would put that idea in their head that there might be a motorcycle rider there. There might be a kid on a person. There might be a person on an e-bike. So they do have to start shoulder checking because of those vulnerable road users in their blind areas. Now, as you and I know, Tim, every time we start to suggest that we legalize lane filtering for motorcycles, you get some goofy video with some guy on a fully dressed Harley Davidson trying to lane split up between two cars and ends up banging the saddlebags off the cars. Of course, there has to be some level of intelligence there that I'm driving a fully dressed motorcycle. I cannot possibly get up between that line of cars, right? But I'm talking about e-scooters, e-bicycles, other motorcycles and those types of things, like as they do in Europe. So it's, as you said, exactly, it's a chicken and egg thing, and we're still going to have crashes, but could we potentially reduce the number of crashes? Because Europe has a very good safety record, and they allow lane filtering. And I am convinced, my professional opinion is, that it's because drivers are aware of these vulnerable road users, because they are lane filtering and they are in the public and they are in the driver's consciousness when they're driving. Mallory, especially, okay, where'd you start? Especially on warm days, you see this summer vehicles like motorcycles out and about. Yes, we are under heat dome here in the Maritimes this week. Mallory, we are just the opposite here on the West Coast. Here on the West Coast, it is actually rainy and cold. I've had my winter jacket on the last couple of days, so it's been very different here in the province of British Columbia with the rain and wet and cold and those types of things. It's a little bit like living on the island. And Tim says as well, flashing your high beams at traffic is illegal in British Columbia if done within 150 meters, which is approximately 500 feet. So yes, you should not blind other people with your high beams to tell them to turn down their high beam lights, right? But unfortunately it happens. Again, it is part and parcel of social driving. People driving when they're tired, forgetting to turn down their high beams and those types of things. A lot of times at night, I mean, now of course we have new vehicles that have automatic dimmers on them. I have talked to several people who have newer vehicles who have this feature on their vehicle, and they say that it's not as good as, it's like the technology is not quite there yet. Myself personally, there are a lot of places I will turn high beams on and those types of things, but you have to be very conscious to remember to turn down your high beams. I find that if I get a little bit tired and I'm driving and I forget to turn down my high beams, oftentimes what I'll do is I'll just turn the low beams on and just leave the low beams on, because I will forget to turn the high beams on. Now, fortunately, on the old buggy, my 1998 Honda CR-V, it's not blinding, right? It's not those halogen burn your retinas out of your eyeballs kind of lights on the front of my car, as it is on some of the newer vehicles where they have those blue retina burning lights that you can see, 4,000 miles down the roadway. That's not the problem I have with the buggy. So sometimes if I leave the high beams on and I'm on a multi-lane road, it's not tragic, but I try not to do that when I'm driving on the roadways and whatnot. The other piece about it, shoulder checking. This is another problem of social driving that we're talking about, and exactly what Tim says, that people are changing lanes all the time without shoulder checking, without looking, without signaling properly. Most people who are lane changing, as we know, after they get their license, are giving you a courtesy flash to tell you that they've already moved over into the other lane, right? Keep in mind, signals are to tell other people that you wish to move over, not that you are moving over, right? Minimum 3 flashes on the signal before you start to move your vehicle into the other lane or turning or those types of things. 1 signal to get the other road users' attention, 2 signals for them to locate you, and then the 3rd signal for them to take some sort of evasive action or to help you out on the roadways. Many times when I was driving truck, more than lots of occasions where students would get in the truck, they'd get a bit comfortable with the truck. We'd be driving along on the 4th or 5th lesson, and I would say, okay, change lanes to the left. And the driver would be like, he'd be looking in the mirror, looking in the mirror. And they would say, well, nobody's letting me in. And I would always chuckle. And then I would look at them and I go, try turning on your signal. And they would turn on their signal, and within 10, 15 seconds, all the space along the side of the truck had opened up. And I was like, very sarcastic about this. I'm like, oh my God, it's magic. Magic. It's just magic. You turn on the signal and people let you in. It's crazy. And I love it when I say that to people and people tell me that. They're like, oh my God, it doesn't work. People just speed up and cut you off and those types of things. Here's the other thing for new drivers. I know that you turn your signal on to change lanes and the person beside you speeds up to pass you. If they speed up to pass you, they're actually doing you a favor. They're getting out of the way so you can move over and change lanes. Yes, it takes a little bit longer. It's going to take another 10 or 15 seconds for you to get into the other lane, but they're actually helping you out. Elevator fan, all the best, my friend. Good luck with the seizures and those types of things. Crossing our fingers for you, sending you good energy, my friend. John, added lane sign could be a merging sign depending on the traffic situation, right? Added lane sign. So, John, when you say added lane sign, are you talking about, say, for example, you're on 2 lanes and it goes from 2 lanes to 3 lanes? Is that what you're talking about in terms of added lane sign? Just let me know there in the comments and I'll be able to help you out with that. So we're talking about shoulder checking. We're talking about lane changes. We're talking about correct signaling to keep yourself safe, because this is another technique of the smarter defensive driving model in the arena of social driving. We're talking about social driving. It's the problems you face every day out on the roadways, okay? I'm a good driver. Every driver on the roadway would believe that statement. Most would, not all. Some are a bit more humble. I definitely would not agree with the statement that I am a good driver, even after all the experience I have. I know that you make mistakes. I know that we make mistakes every time we drive. It's just part and parcel of driving. It's like a coffee table in the living room. If you want to stop knocking your knee on the coffee table in the living room, you got to get rid of the coffee table. Same thing with Lego. If you as a parent don't want to step on Lego, you got to get rid of it out of your house. But inevitably, at some point, some juncture, you're going to step on Lego in your house if you have kids. Same thing with driving. We make mistakes. We get tired. We're inebriated. We're fatigued. We get distracted when we're driving. It happens all the time. So we need to put in place skills and abilities and techniques and habits that are going to keep us safe when other people make mistakes and when we make mistakes. That's what we need to do when we're driving on the roadways. Social driving, okay? People are retaliatory and reactionary, and they follow too close. They police other drivers. These are all part and parcel characteristics of social driving in the way that people drive on our roadways. Space management, keep that space in front, okay? 2 to 3 second following distance minimum when you're driving. Stop in traffic 1 vehicle length back from the traffic in front of you. The reason that you do that is several, okay? First and foremost, it's a defensive posturing against being rear-ended. If you're sitting there, you're watching the center mirror, you're looking at traffic behind you coming up, and you see that the traffic is not going to stop behind you, then what you do is you simply move forward, pump your brake pedal, and flash the brake lights to tell the person behind you that they're coming up too fast. So space management, speed management, understanding the speed differences between your vehicle and other vehicles on the roadway. The easiest comparison is between your car doing 30 miles an hour in a city or 50 kilometers an hour and a bicycle that's probably doing 18 miles an hour or 18 miles an hour, which is about 25 kilometers an hour. There's going to be a speed differential there. You're going to gain on the cyclist a lot faster than, say, for example, another vehicle. So you need to recognize those speed differentials to manage space in your manage your space between you and other road users and other fixed objects on the roadway. Recognize intersections. Where are these vehicles potentially going to slow down? Where are they potentially going to turn on the roadways? Mallory says some people don't know how to drive from where to look when driving forward or backwards. And absolutely, Mallory. And for new drivers or inexperienced drivers, it's not that they do it maliciously. This is what I'm telling people. Most of the time people make mistakes. They don't do it maliciously. They do it because they don't know. It's out of ignorance. They simply do not know other skills and habits and driving techniques that are going to keep them on the roadways. Because as I said, when it comes to driving a car, once you get your license, unless you get a speeding ticket or you upgrade your license, especially here in Canada, there is no reason, there is no motivation for you to take a professional development course. I know that in some states, California, for example, if you get a speeding ticket in that state, you are required to do defensive driving training. Now, the quality of that defensive driver training could be anything. I suspect that there is a very wide spectrum of different kinds of defensive driving that you are going to get when you get a speeding ticket in those states. It's the exact, here's another example. Client that I'm working for right now has hired me to do defensive driving for their drivers. They had a school that was testing and doing road tests of new drivers, and he said in the last 10 years, no driver has ever failed that driver's test, which, you know, him and I both chuckled about that. It's very unlikely in a 10-year span of drivers applying for jobs as taxi cab drivers that nobody ever failed that driver's test. I suspect that there are people who just are not competent in driving and are going to make mistakes enough so that they fail the driving test. So what standard was the driving test being administered at? Did they just go around the corner? You know, person didn't really know anything about driving. Was the person even a driving instructor? Had they done any training? Were they looking for specific things that were safety issues for applicants to the taxi cab company? So that's here and there in terms of professional driver training. And so most people in the arena of social driving are retaliatory, reactionary. I'm a good driver. They're following too close and they're stopping close to other people. And interesting enough, yesterday I had a comment from a smart driver about my defensive driving video, and he believed from training that he had taken 20 years ago, he or she, might be a she as well, I don't know, I suspected it was a man, that defensive driving was actually emergency maneuvers. So when you got into an emergency situation, then you implemented defensive driving, which I disagree with. I mean, for some people that may be their definition of defensive driving, but I go with Miyagi. Best block, not be there. Best defensive driving is to be proactive, create situations in which you can control the conditions most of the time on the roadway. And if you have that 2 to 3 second following distance, most of the time you are going to control the driving situation in which you find yourself, right? If you have that 2 to 3 second following distance in front, rather than being reactionary, you can assess the situation and respond accordingly. Space buys you time, time buys you options, options prevent crashes. Jackson, how are you, my friend? The other piece about that is, in terms of emergency situations, there are two ways out of an emergency situation: to brake and stop your vehicle, or to steer out of an emergency situation. And steering out of an emergency situation requires that you have space. If you were following too close, you don't have the space in which to drive in an emergency situation. It's always faster to drive out of an emergency situation than it is to brake, especially with ABS brakes. And there are many people out there who are going to disagree with me on this. ABS brakes do not stop you in a shorter distance than standard brakes. The fastest way to stop a vehicle is four-wheel lockup. Unfortunately, you lose complete control of the vehicle in a four-wheel lockup. But we don't have any vehicles on the roadways in this day and age that don't have ABS brakes. ABS brakes came out at the end of the 1980s and early 1990s, and they have been fitted to every vehicle in the last 35 years. So it's a non-argument. There's no argument, because you cannot find a vehicle that doesn't have ABS brakes. All right? They do not stop you in a shorter distance. They do help you to keep control of the vehicle, but they don't stop you in a shorter distance. And they will stop you in a very short period of time. But that's the argument, is that they will stop you, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, there's always smart drivers, other people that are going to come on here and tell me that, yes, they will stop you in a shorter distance. No, they won't. So there we go. All right. Excellent. So space management, speed management, observation, observing when you're driving in the arena of social driving, figuring out what other people are doing on the roadway, because as we said, people do not signal. Most of the time it's a courtesy flash that other people are telling you that they've already changed lanes into the other lane. They don't signal to ask for permission, right? They don't say, hey, I want to move over into the other lane. Can you create some space for me? No, they're already there by the time they've turned their signal on when they're moving into the other lane. So observation, looking far down the roadway, checking your center mirror far down the road, check your instrument panel far down the road, and then check your wing mirrors. And that should be repeated every 15 to 20 seconds. Shoulder checking every time you change direction of the vehicle. Not when the road changes direction of your vehicle, going around a curve or whatnot. But if you're turning or changing lanes, then you need to signal, you need to shoulder check, right? Shoulder checking is the number one observation skill that people lose after they get their license. And there's no incentive. They're like, well, I already passed that place. Why would I shoulder check? So, I've been involved in testing that proves this. Tim, I still haven't seen the testing that does this, especially on snow and ice and slippery conditions. But like I said, it's not an argument because all vehicles have ABS brakes, so it's not a. It's what we got to deal with, right? So there you go. Okay, ABS extends stopping distance on gravel and snow. Okay, yep. And I think that's the part where it falls down for me is when I get on snow and ice, Tim, and I'm coming up to an intersection and I kind of get caught out, and all of a sudden the ABS kicks in, and then the car just keeps going. When I would really like to be able to turn it off at that juncture, because I've been caught out a few times over the years where you're on snow and ice and you hit the ABS and it grinds and the car is just still moving forward. So there you go. All right, excellent. Observation, shoulder checking, reversing, make sure you have a 360-degree scan around your vehicle, looking out through the back window, using your backup camera, using your mirrors, use all your tools when you're backing up, okay? I know lots of people, I see people all the time in parking lots, they're just looking at their backup camera when they're reversing. They have no awareness of what is around their vehicle when they're driving, and people will argue, well, I can just use my backup camera, it's safer. No, it's not. You wouldn't just use one tool to build a house. You wouldn't use some wood and hammer and nails. Why would you use all your tools, squares, levels, string, those types of things. So use all your tools to keep yourself safe when you're reversing. And again, shoulder checking. People will say, oh, I have convex mirrors or I have blind spot detectors on my vehicle. I don't need to shoulder check. These observation technologies are just a backup for good driving skills because, as I said, we make mistakes when we're driving. So defensive driving skills put in place to combat the problems of social driving are there for when other people make mistakes and for when you make mistakes, because we all make mistakes when we're driving. All right. Tim says you are trading the ability to steer when you are not capable of threshold braking. Yes. And one of the studies, Tim, I would need to look this up for this information. The thing is that they did studies before ABS came out, and they found that most people did threshold braking anyway. They did it naturally after having some years of experience driving. Of course, it wasn't that way for new drivers. And because I'd been in the truck on a skid pad with a new driver and standard brakes in a big truck, and they just pushed the brake pedal down and held it. They were not doing threshold braking. Whereas I got in the truck and I had experience driving truck and I was doing threshold braking. For those of you who don't know what threshold braking is you doing the exact same thing with a standard brake system as ABS brakes does. So you push the brake to the point of lockup, you release the brake pedal, and then assess the situation and then reapply the brakes. That's what threshold braking is. Arch, hello, I'm a New York City driving instructor with a teaching license. I would like to prepare to teach theory in New York classes. I know I have to wait a year before intake the class. How do I prepare early? Arch, you just do, if you're going to teach in class, just watch as many videos as you can, learn as much as you can, look at some of the driving instruction manuals. There are heaps and heaps of driving instruction manuals out there. Figure out what your topics are, and as well figure out how to create lesson plans. Okay, that is one of the things they're going to do with the in-class material for being a driving instructor. You're going to have to know how to create lesson plans. What the objective is for the class that you're teaching. At the end of this lesson, the students will know the 3 stopping positions at stop sign intersections. At the end of this lesson, students will know when the vehicle comes to a complete stop. Those are your objectives. And then you go through in a lesson plan and you figure out exactly how you're going to teach that to the students. And then you're going to, what visual aids you're going to do and how long it is going to take you for that lesson. That's what you're going to be doing in terms of in-class driving instruction, the theory and those types of things. So that's just an example of doing lesson plans. So that's what you're going to be doing when you go into the classroom. Most of the emphasis in terms of in-class driving instruction is about you coming up with lesson plans, being able to create those lesson plans, and then teach certain information to students and show them how to do that. Okay. Tim, SEA paper is from my colleagues testing ABS on ice. Okay. I'll have a look at that, Tim. Thank you for that information. Awesome. All right, so the last piece of defensive driving, smarter defensive driving in the arena of social driving is communication. You need to communicate effectively with other traffic on the roadway, or you need to interpret how other drivers are communicating to you. Because as we said, in the arena of social driving, other drivers do not signal, okay? That is just part and parcel. And if you get all excited about other drivers not signaling, it's not a matter of if they're not going to signal. It's just a matter of when they're not going to signal. It's going to be all the time. All right. And I've been paying attention to some of this in my own driving, and there are times that I fail to signal too. And I've realized it's because that's the only option. For example, because we have to go a different way to the suburb because the main road is closed, you come down to the bottom of the hill and you can either turn left or right, but most people come down there and then they turn right. They're not going to turn left, right? And so you come down there and you think, well, I'm turning right. Everybody knows I'm going to turn right. So I've caught myself not signaling at that juncture because I think to myself, well, that's the only option and everybody else should know that that's the only option, which isn't the case at all. What you need to do is you need to train yourself and be more aware of when you are changing directions of the vehicle and when you are changing directions of the vehicle to signal and shoulder check to be a safer, smarter driver. Now, in terms of communication, the position of the vehicle, position of the road user on the roadway is going to indicate intent. As we said, if we have a vehicle in the left turning lane, there's a high probability that that vehicle is going to turn left. If we have a road user at a crosswalk, there's a high probability that he or she is going to cross the roadway at that crosswalk. And again, if we're coming up to an intersection, we're approaching an intersection, we're following another vehicle, that vehicle is slowing as it's approaching the intersection and moving the vehicle slightly to the right, there is a high probability that that vehicle is going to turn right at that intersection. So position of the vehicle, position of the road user communicates intent and signals or indicates what other road users are doing on the roadway. Pay attention to that. Lights and signals, eye contact, hand gestures, and then last in terms of communication is using the horn. Use the horn sparingly because in North America it's seen as a sign of aggression and you want to prevent road rage and distracted driving and those types of things. Now, space management, we've been tying some of these live streams together over the past few weeks. A few weeks ago, we talked about distracted driving, we talked about road rage, and all this can be reduced on our roadways if we manage space in front of our vehicle. And there's a short, and I'll leave myself a note here to put the short up down in the description there. It's me getting distracted by a woman walking along the sidewalk carrying a skateboard, and all of a sudden the traffic in front of me stopped for no apparent reason. And, I locked up the car in the intersection, had the ABS engaged, and scared myself silly on the roadways. And of course, the dash cam was running, so I made a short out of it just to indicate to you that, it's not a matter of if we're going to be distracted when we're driving. You cannot have 24/7 attention on the task of driving all the time. You are going to be distracted when you're driving. There's simply too much stuff going on. There's too many thoughts in our brains. So we need to have that 2 to 3 second following distance in front to compensate for when we do get distracted on the roadways. And again, if you do have that space, then you can brake and get your vehicle slowed down. Know that for the purposes of driving and being a safer, smarter driver in the arena of social driving. All right. Distracted driving. As well, if you keep that space in front, manage space well, it's less likely that you're going to be engaged in road rage. Okay, if you do have somebody else tailgating you, do slow down, or you brake check them, which is you hammer on the brakes and slow down all of a sudden when that person behind you is tailgating you. Then you could potentially be involved in a road rage incident. But otherwise, managing space in front and around your vehicle is going to reduce the incidence of road rage when you're driving. So there are many other benefits of engaging in smarter defensive driving, the skills and habits of smarter defensive driving. Less chance that you're going to get into a crash if you become distracted when you're driving. There's less chance of you becoming involved in road rage incidents when you're out driving on the roadways. TL, the person behind me has to yield to the movements of vehicles in front of them. You never know why they are slowing. Yes, indeed. Mallory, it surprised me. Some people don't even know how to communicate with the turn signals. Yes, indeed. And if you want to see a road rage incident, I believe it's with a BMW driver and not signaling. Clive Owen in Shoot 'em Up. At the beginning of the movie, this guy fails to signal and he runs him off the roadway in a road rage incident. So, this is the other reason that you want to signal when you're changing directions of your vehicle. It's very easy. You just turn the signal on, turn it off, and those types of things. However, many people do not. And I posted a question on the community tab on the weekend asking smart drivers if they thought that BMW drivers were the Karens of driving. And it's been interesting. It didn't really get a whole lot of response on that poll. I suspect that many people are not upset with BMW drivers, nor do they know what Karens are, which is interesting. It's interesting how those polls, those different kinds of polls that I put up on the weekend get different responses, and people engage in those and whatnot. So, the arena of social driving, people drive badly. They follow too close, they fail to give the right of way, and they mismanage speed and space. And this is why we have so many traffic crashes on our roadways, and we have a high percentage of the United States has a not so great track record in terms of traffic safety, and it has been that way for several decades in the United States of America compared to other countries such as Canada and the United States, or Canada, Europe, Australia, and whatnot. So know that and put in place the tools that are going to make you a safer, smarter driver and keep you safe when you're out on the roadways. Space management, speed management, observation, and communication. TL, love the polls. One question, are they monetized? TL, no, they're not monetized. I do not get any kickback on those polls. I wish I did. That would be really great. Epic, as a cyclist on the road, you should try sticking to the shoulder. It is safe to do so because car drivers will try to overtake you despite having double lines. That's what I've been doing. Yes, indeed, Epic. You definitely want to stay to the shoulder of the road. If you get out in the middle of the lane and you are blocking traffic behind you on your bicycle, believe me, I have been there. They get really, really excited when you do that. And they are yelling at you and swearing at you and telling you all kinds of terrible things about who you are as a person and saying things about your character. So yes, definitely when you're riding a bicycle. And again, riding a bicycle is no different than riding a motorcycle on the roadway. You are in harm's way. There are no fender benders on a bicycle. I have been run over, I have been doored, and I have been run into on my bicycle, and I have been injured. No, I can't say that I have not been injured in every... I've been lucky, very lucky in terms of the crashes I've had when I'm riding my bicycle. Arthur, I can drive, I just need to pass the written tests. Okay, excellent. And once you get past the written test and take your learners, then you can sign up for your on-road driver's test and you can work towards getting your license, my friend. TL, in North Carolina, it is legal to change lanes to pass even on a double yellow line. Yes, and I know what you're saying as well, TL. If you look at the videos, and I'll put myself a note, so I'll put those down in the description afterwards. New York City has double solid yellow lines, and you can change lanes over the double solid yellow lines if you have to move around another road user, because many of the roads that we were on in the Bronx with my friend Big Mac Sam, there were obstacles and obstructions, other road users and those types of things, and you had to change lanes over a double solid yellow line to get past those road users. So exactly what you said, passing a bicycle, passing a car, an obstruction, those types of things. There are situations and circumstances where you will have to cross over a double solid line to safely give room to other road users on the roadway, because as I said in the introduction, one of the problems is not giving enough space, not having enough following distance, not stopping one vehicle length back in traffic, and not giving 3 feet, 1 meter of space between your vehicle and vulnerable road users on the roadway. Bicycles, pedestrians, e-scooters, e-bicycles, those types of things. 3 feet minimum. You don't want to be any closer than that. When I'm on my bicycle and I can reach out and touch the car, it is way too close to me, and there is no margin for error there. So this is what I say in terms of space. Keep space around your vehicle. There are 2 ways out of an emergency situation: stopping or steering. If it's stopping and you don't have any space, it's not likely that you're going to get your vehicle stopped and you're going to be involved in a rear end crash. In order to steer out of an emergency situation, which is faster, you need space in which to steer. So you need to have that 2 to 3 second following distance. Space buys you time. Time buys you options. Options prevent crashes when you're driving. Arch, yes, correct. New York City has lots of road users and obstacles. I teach out of Queens and Long Island. The scooters are out of control. And yes, Arch, 2 years ago when I was in Spain, the electric scooters and the electric bicycles were just right crazy. I have a video of a guy on an e-scooter, and we were on one of those tour buses going through Madrid. Same thing. I mean, they're like right up between the lanes of traffic as they're moving. If Tim is still here, lane filtering. So lane filtering is when they move through the lanes of cars to get to the head of the queue. Lane, there's another word for it when the traffic is actually moving and bicycles and scooters are between the lanes of cars. Tim knows what it's called. He told me a few years ago and I forgot what it was called now. I'm having a brain cramp in terms of what that's called when the e-scooters and those types of things are moving between the lanes of traffic as the lanes of traffic are moving down the roadway. Yeah, it's crazy how out of control it is, and I can only imagine what it's like there in Queens and New York City and those, the other boroughs in the city there in terms of e-scooters and whatnot. Cars are out of control, but no driver has ever been killed by a scooter. In California, lane filtering is legal. Yes, it is. Lane filtering is one thing, but driving between the lanes of traffic when traffic is actually moving, I don't know. Lane filtering and lane splitting. There we go. I think, and which is which, Tim? Lane splitting. Which one's the one coming to the intersection and what's the other one when traffic is moving? Arch, they're going to require license plates for scooters soon. It will be the law. That'll be interesting, Arch, to see how much pushback there is on that when they start to bring in license plates for e-scooters and e-bicycles. I know that we have motorcycles, scooters here. I think if it's less than 50 cc's that you don't require a license plate for the motorcycle. I think it might have to have insurance, but you can still drive it on public highways and whatnot. Epic. Other states, they're kind of vague. When do I need to pass onto the double line? When there are cyclists on the road itself. New Jersey seems to have illegal unless changed. Europe and Australia, white lines. Yes, and that is one of the differences when you're in Australia or in Europe. They don't designate traffic moving in opposite directions with yellow lines and white lines. Everything in Europe, everything in Australia is all white lines. There's no designation on the road markings. I don't think it makes a whole lot of difference. I've driven in Europe, I've driven in Australia, and the lack of yellow lines designating traffic moving in opposite directions really hasn't affected my driving or anybody others driving. Tim says lane splitting is zooming through moving traffic. Okay, so lane splitting, lane filtering. Just write that down and leave myself a note so I have it. So social driving, problems associated with driving, what you're facing, what you're dealing with every time you're out on the roadway. People following too close, people not signaling, the belief that I'm right, you're wrong, policing other drivers' actions on the roadway, honking, giving them the finger, following too close. These are all problems of social driving. This is what you're dealing with when you're on the roadway. It's not a matter of if somebody else is going to do something goofy on the roadway. It's a matter of when it's going to happen. And you want to create those habits that are going to keep you safe. We know that the average driver is only going to crash 3 or 4 times in a 40-year driving career. So that means that every 15 to 17 years, you're going to have a crash. Many people believe that the high water mark of their ability to drive well is the fact that they haven't had a crash, which could not be farther from the truth. Just because you haven't had a crash doesn't mean you're a good driver. So you're not going to have a crash today, tomorrow, 5 years from now. It may be 7 years from now. So the habits and skills of keeping yourself safe and engaging in smarter defensive driving practices are creating those habits so they're in place so that they save you not today, not tomorrow, not next week, but maybe 5 years from now. So create those habits, create those skills so that you don't have to think about it. It's the same thing as applying the parking brake. Apply the parking brake every time you exit your vehicle. That way you know the vehicle is going to get that way you know the vehicle is going to be there when you come back to get it. That it hasn't rolled away down a hill, crashed into a tree and exploded in a fiery inferno. Just apply the brake, the parking brake, every time you exit the vehicle. And now, I mean, it's even easier because on newer vehicles, they have the technology with the electric brakes that it automatically applies the brake for you. You don't even have to think about it. So you want to create habits and skills that you don't have to think about that aspect of driving. It's the same thing as shoulder checking and signaling every time you change direction of the vehicle. Just do it. And that way you create that habit and skill that will keep you safe. Not today, not tomorrow, not next month, next year, 5 years, but maybe in 7 years, it may pull your proverbial bacon out of the fire. Tim says, my old boss used to respond by saying, isn't it a great day that everyone has been able to avoid you for that long? I'm going to use that, Tim. That's awesome. That's a great saying. I'm gonna use that. Mallory says U-turns are not permitted in Nova Scotia, and yes, and the other piece about that, Mallory, same thing here in British Columbia and other places in the United States and in Canada is that it's not part of the driving culture. A year ago, more than a year ago now, I went to Maryland. U-turns are part of the driving culture. Okay, and even Google promotes U-turns. We got lost in Vancouver there a couple of years ago, and to reroute us on the GPS, it kept saying, make a U-turn, make a U-turn, make a U-turn. There are alternatives to U-turns that are much safer. Isaac, got my test today. Any tips? Yes. Space management, speed management, observation, communication, shoulder check, shoulder check, shoulder check. Every time you change directions of the vehicle, Isaac, that is the most common error on driver's tests. Signal shoulder check every time you change direction of the vehicle. Shoulder check twice as you're coming up to a turn, half a block from the turn and then at the turn, okay? Space management, 2 to 3 second following distance. If you're not near anything, it's less likely that you're going to hit anything. So 2 to 3 second following distance, stop at the correct stopping position at intersections, before the stop line, before the crosswalk or sidewalk, if those two conditions don't exist, at the edge of the intersection, just before entering the box of the intersection. Stop back 1 vehicle length from the vehicle in front of you when stopped in traffic. Reversing, complete awareness around your vehicle. You can look at your backup camera, you can look at your mirrors, but for the most part, you're looking out through the back window. When you get to the test center, show up 20 to 30 minutes early, bring another piece of identification, make sure you bring your license. If you're taking your own vehicle, bring a If you're bringing your own vehicle, do a pre-trip inspection on your vehicle. Make sure that the registration and the insurance is up to date. Make sure the seatbelt works on the passenger side, the seat. Make sure all the lights work. Make sure the horn works. Know how to turn on the air conditioning, the defrost, the high-low beam lights, and what's the other one? Windshield wipers. So windshield wipers, high-low beams, and the defrost on the car, minimum for secondary controls. What else do I need to say? Back into the parking space at the test center if they have a parking lot where there's reserved parking for the people taking tests. That way you can drive out. Make sure you signal in the parking lot as well when you're changing directions of the vehicle. All right, so that should get you going. Good luck on your driver's test today, and drop back and let us know how it goes. Evan, my friend, don't stop directly across the street from a bus stop on a road with only one lane in each direction, or you'll make others take over using the wrong side of the road. Yes, that is a good tip. 30 miles an hour is the national speed limit in the UK, is shown by circular signs. Excellent information. Thank you for that. Arch, I teach my students about the parking brake. The other instructors in my school don't. They've been teaching for years. I don't know why they don't teach that. Arch, there are places, probably not where you are there in New York City, but I know here in British Columbia that if the student doesn't put on the parking brake every time they park the vehicle, they are assigned demerit points. They don't necessarily outright fail, but they are assigned demerits, and unfortunately that could make or break the test. So there are places that if you don't apply the parking brake, you could potentially not pass your driver's test. So that's just what we teach, is that every time you park the vehicle, apply the parking brake. Just get in that habit. Create that habit. Those safe driving skills habits. All right, we're going to leave it there for today. If you had a test in the last couple of weeks and passed, congratulations. You have a test coming up in the next week or so. Good luck on that. And remember, pick the best answer, not necessarily the right answer. Have a great day. Bye now.